Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Father-Son Packers podcast, your source for Packers news, notes, and analysis. My name is Tommy, and I'm one of your hosts, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, my dad, Matt. Dad, how you doing?
Doing all right. You know, I've got a little company in my studio. Let's call it a studio today.
It's a studio as long as you're using it as a studio, right?
Yeah, so the dog is here keeping me company because she needs company after some fireworks are going on outside. On and off outside.
She knows you have the chicken. She knows you are there to protect her
when fireworks go off. So that is how the protection works. Fireworks go off. Time for some chicken.
She secretly
Circle
set those
protection chicken.
She set those fireworks off herself.
Chicken is the circle protection fireworks.
Yes, she set those fireworks off herself because now she's been, at some point, maybe you can get her to be excited about fireworks just
Mom's
by
hoping that
giving her enough chicken.
So that she learns that fireworks mean chicken.
Yes, but anyway, we are here today as a podcast group, as a podcast duo, to talk about the big Packers
duo group.
Yes, but it's the big Packers roster move. The Packers signed defensive tackle Cameron Young, formerly a fourth-round pick in 2023 by the Seattle Seahawks, beefing up the interior. No, we're here to talk a little bit about the Jaire Alexander move, which happened just yesterday. Packers release star corner Jaire Alexander. A bit surprising at this point. They kind of waited long enough for it to become surprising, but if it had happened like 2 weeks ago, like a month ago, I think we both would have been like, yeah, that's about as expected, right?
Especially before free agency started or before the drafts, they basically said they were going to. Everybody sounded like they were going to. But now the yo-yo had swung all the way to surprised.
Exactly. And so they really did us a solid in the content game because now everyone's going to be clicking on this because Jaire's going to be, in the thumbnail on the title. So really
all
just
teams interested in getting Jaire, which I was just saying, I'm surprised there wasn't already a deal set up, but do you think there's going to be a bidding war?
I think there are going to be a number of teams interested in his services, and we can talk about that a little bit. So we're going to talk a little bit about that Jaire Alexander move. We're going to talk a little bit about the first day of minicamp. Pretty nondescript practice, but there are a couple maybe takeaways that we can talk about a little bit. And then we're going to talk a little bit about what the Jaire move means for the corner room in general, because I think I've seen a lot of people on, Packers internet that seem a bit, concerned about the state of the Packers corner room. And I don't know about you, but I don't necessarily share those same concerns. So we went back and looked at the corner rooms of some of the playoff teams last year around the NFL, the corner room of the Packers specifically, and how, the Packers corner room this year might stack up against those. Because I think, when you really look at it in the context of corner depth around the NFL, sure, they don't have 4-star corners and then a fifth guy who's a proven starter. But when you really look at, a lot of teams around the NFL, no one really has that. So we'll talk about that a little bit at the end as well. Before we get into any of that, though, just wanted to pitch a couple of things. If you like what you hear here today, subscribe, whether that's, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, all three. Tell a friend, leave a comment, leave a review. We would appreciate it. Like, subscribe, hit the bell. I probably already said that, but hey, do it twice and then do it a third time to make sure it sticks. But anyway, check us out on Blue Sky at Father Son Packer. We skeet out whenever we have new episodes out, and then any roster moves, Packers related, stories, content from other Packers content creators, one-stop shop and everything Titletown. Once again, that's at Father Son Packer. We'll be doing an episode every single week for the entire offseason and then 2 a week during the season, so check those out as well. We'll be talking about training camp, players poised for big breakout seasons, who's on the hot seat, quote unquote, who has the most to prove. We'll talk about that a little bit. We'll talk about, looking around the NFC North. Can the Packers reclaim their throne on top of the NFC North division? Maybe. We'll see. Maybe they reclaim it this year. But Dad, any other thoughts, comments, or should we start talking about Jaire? The Packers have moved on from the first round pick of Brian Gutekunst's tenure as Packers GM.
Yeah. And certainly the first round pick he made, as opposed to the first one he held, because he traded back and then traded up.
It was great maneuvering. It feels like it was just yesterday, and now he's gone, which is kind of crazy to think about. I think it was the first 7 years. And, Jaire Alexander, first Packers jersey that I owned besides a Brett Favre jersey, which I had when I was a kid, which is kind of, crazy to think about.
And crazy to have right now.
Yeah, well, I don't have that one anymore. I have the Jaire one still, though. It's still sitting over there.
Maybe I'll go you can hold on to that Jaire one.
Maybe I'll go put it on. I know you still have your Zadarius Smith one, so, we
I still wear that when I go to a game.
Exactly. But anyway, so let's talk a little bit about that Jaire Alexander release. So, officially released, was announced by, I think, Rappaport first, I think was the first one that I saw at least. Couple of interesting tidbits. They apparently redid pieces of his contract before releasing him to essentially accelerate all of the dead cap. So they're going to save $17 million with this release. We've talked about this before. The money behind, the logic behind doing it, essentially talking about, yes, he's been very good, but he's missed half the games, et cetera, et cetera. And so if you're looking for the reason behind this release, it really mostly has to do with health. And, you don't need to take my word for it. Mark Murphy and Brian Gutekunst both talked about that. Mark Murphy essentially said, and I'm paraphrasing here, but like, we're used to playing without him, which I think was very candid. We'll say.
Yeah, I heard somebody say he's just giving no.
Yeah, now that he's going to retire anyway,
and he's on his way. It's like he's got senioritis. Well, it's a different.
Yeah, I mean, still senioritis. Yeah, I mean, he's a senior.
I'm not trying to accuse him of having any cognitive decline.
Yeah,
it's
but
more it's final semester and he's on his way out. It's like, I don't even need to show up for this class anymore.
Yeah, so I mean, it really just has a lot to do with availability and the fact that, unfortunately, he only played in 30 of 51 regular season games after signing that extension. And I talked about Brian Gutekunst, mentioning that that health was a big reason. They asked him specifically, why not take a shot on him staying healthy this year and just, paying that essentially paying that 17 million, quote unquote, essentially not saving that $17 million. And he responded, quote, obviously we've done that the past few years and it hasn't really worked out for us, end quote, which was also, I thought, very plain and candid. And he, went on to say there's no bad blood. It's just unfortunate. It's no one's fault, et cetera, et cetera. Like, these injuries, things just unfortunately happen. But I don't know about you, I was a little surprised by the, openness and plainness with the way that both Gutekunst and Murphy talked about it. And they're not wrong. That kind of is just how it is. It does just boil down to availability at the end of the day. But were you surprised by how they talked about it? Any other thoughts on the release that you wanted to touch on? I was surprised by the fact that they're eating the whole dead cap hit this year, which is a little surprising. It kind of limits their flexibility for any moves they can make this year and doesn't actually, because the cap rolls over. So if they had just decided to split it, they would have the same amount of cap space. They're going to have the same amount of cap space next year as they would have had anyways. So it's a bit odd that they did it that way. I don't know.
I don't understand the logic behind it because, it rolls over every year. So if they, had only used or spent 7 this year and 7 next year, they would have more flexibility this year. And if they didn't spend it, they would have the same amount next year. It's like he doesn't trust himself not to spend it. It's like, I can't save the money. So I've got to force myself.
Lock it away.
Got to lock that next year money. I don't know. It was just a little surprising that they did it this way because they didn't need to. It was like, well, we waited all the way for the June 1st deadline, but we are going to, eschew that. We don't want it.
Yeah. And
but it doesn't change how much money they have in 2026. It's just how much. The only thing that saves you is how much you have in the first year. But over the 2-year period, you have the same amount. It doesn't actually save any total cap money.
Yeah, and Ken Ingalls on Twitter rather, he talked about he's a guy who's a great follow for anything Packers cap related. So he's a expert on all things, the collective bargaining, the cap, what the restructures do, what the point of it is. And I mean, he was posting out there that he has no real, no real understanding of why they would do this. It doesn't really make any sense in any way. And he posted out there a while ago, is like, if anyone has any reasons for why they would do this, please let me know, because I don't understand. And I don't think he's gotten any responses that have made sense.
Here's what he did. He just didn't. He was trying to, squash any rumors of trading for Hendrickson or any other big signing that would cost a lot of money this year.
And someone hypothesized, I think it might have also been Ingalls, that they don't want the stigma of being a top 3 team in available cap space, because I think they would have had $46 million in cap space for this year. But now that they're accelerating all that dead cap to this year, that they won't. So they won't be but that seems kind of a bit silly to me, right?
It's like, you can't handle the heat?
Yeah, it's like, who cares?
I mean, they gave the story as I guess they were going to be over the cap next year.
Yeah, so now they're going to be under it. But anyway, so that kind of does it for the Jaire conversation. It just kind of it happened a bit suddenly, wouldn't you say? And so maybe let's as he goes, because I think one of my favorite Packers over the last like 5, 6, 7 years. Do you have a favorite Jaire Alexander memory during his time with Green Bay? I'm kind of putting you on the spot here. It wasn't in our doc, but I figured, hey, we might as well talk about it a little bit.
Let's see. There's the Gritty by Justin Jefferson. There's a lot of people chose
really that whole game. That whole game was fantastic, where he talked all of that, the entire week leading up to it, and then completely backed it up, which was hilarious.
But one of my favorites, and I don't think I've seen other people post this, but I haven't looked at very many, is when he's doing this. The interview was like, "Wait, is the ball coming? Is
the Dolphins one?" Like, I was thinking the exact same one. He's like, "Oh my goodness, he's really gonna throw it." He's like, "Oh, what was it?" He said right before, "Oh man, he's fast," and then I had to get up on my horse or something like that.
He was like, "Oh man, I got fast."
Yeah. I mean, there's a number of
that whole interview is hilarious.
He's a fantastic interview.
One pearl after another.
There was the I forget what news station it was, but there was a local news station doing a report outside of Green Bay, and then he came up and was like, "Pack is back," and then was just for some reason just there. I mean, there's I still remember his breakout game in, I want to say it was 2018 against the Rams when he was really on it. I think it was in the old
Brandon Cooks.
Yeah, on Brandon Cooks. It was in the old the Rose Bowl stadium, I think.
Coliseum.
The Coliseum, yeah. So that one stands out in my mind. I'm trying to think back. The game against Tampa in the NFC Championship game, multiple picks in that game, that stands out in my mind. The pick he had, when he tackled Stephon Diggs with Adam Thielen,
using
fantastic. That was amazing. I loved every second of that.
That was a Reggie White-esque move.
Yes, like how Reggie White threw Chris Carter.
I'm gonna throw Adam Thielen into Stephon Diggs to make the tackle.
Yep, that was fantastic. Just trying to think. The pick he had against Dallas in the divisional game, just a couple years ago, that was fun. Just a number of really awesome Packers memories and ones that shouldn't be forgotten. With that said, Dad, do you have a team you least want him to go to outside of division? Division's a little too obvious.
I was gonna say, I think even within division, I think Minnesota would be the most annoying.
Minnesota would be annoying. I think the Niners would be annoying. They need a corner. I could 100% see that happen.
The Niners are the top odds right now.
Yeah,
I was expecting the Bills because the rumors are they were the ones who wanted to trade for him.
Yeah, but that was, I think, before the draft, and then they drafted Harrison in the first round. So I'd be a little surprised.
So
could be Baltimore.
Or who would I be most annoyed by?
Both. You can do either.
The Eagles.
Eagles would be
annoyed by the Eagles because after they lost Slay, and then they'd be at it. So maybe they could use somebody. That'd be annoying.
I could see him in an Eagles uniform. Unfortunately, I could see him going to Baltimore.
Yeah,
the
Lamar.
Obvious connection is they played with Lamar in college and they're good friends. The only thing is just they kind of have a lot of corners, right? They drafted Nate Wiggins in the first round last year. They have Marlon Humphrey. I guess they could use another guy outside of the two of them. Although I think someone pointed out, I can't remember who, that hey, Nate Wiggins 185, and then if you have Jaire next to him, that's 195. You're getting pretty small on defense. But I would be fun to watch him with the Ravens. I think that would be one where I'd be excited to watch him play. Honestly, any AFC team, I'm totally fine with it. Wherever he wants to go in the AFC. Sick. Just please don't go to an NFC contender. Someone mentioned the Falcons as maybe an interesting option because they don't have any corners.
Oh, could be.
Yeah, I don't know. There are a lot of interesting ones, but please don't go to the Vikings or the Lions or the Bears or the Niners. Maybe back to the Panthers. They have some money still, I think, and they don't have a corner opposite JC Horn. So this is something interesting to think about. But anything else that you want to touch on with the Jaire thing? We don't really understand why they did the cap thing the way they did, but ultimately it's going to get them under the cap for 2026, which is a big reason why they did it. And it's just tough.
Why? That's why, regardless of how they decided to manipulate the cap this year, that's ultimately why they did it. So they could have more money to sign guys who are on expiring contracts this year, I think.
Yeah, which, if they kept some of this, cap space this year, I mean, I guess it doesn't really matter. But I would imagine maybe this frees you up to do some Elton Jenkins, giving him a little extra money. Maybe the Zach Tom deal can come in now. And also just, I think it's just frees up some time for the front office to focus on those things as well, because it's one less fire to be putting out. But anyway, we'll be keeping you up to date on any other, contract related news going forward. But I'd imagine maybe this frees up some money and some time for some of those things to get focused on now. Moving on to minicamp news. Good news, everyone is there. So that's a plus. Everyone is present. Although it was said that no one saw Quay Walker there, like none of the reporters did, so unclear on what he's up to. But speaking of him, these were the players who were rehabbing or not available to practice. Quay Walker, Micah Robinson, Kalen King, who unfortunately has a cast on his right arm. Something happened, I guess, in one of the previous practices. But Matt LaFleur did say that they don't expect it to be serious and they expect him back by training camp. So that's at least some good news.
They probably didn't actually say what it was, did they?
No, they did not.
They never do unless they're
legally required by the league. Yes, and even then, they're probably trying to pull a fast one on you.
It's my knee.
My knee.
He hurt my knee.
And then Zane Anderson, Colin Oliver, Aaron Banks. So that's one to keep an eye on. Elton Jenkins. And Matt LaFleur, per Jason B. Hirschhorn, said, quote, "He is helping out and coaching the other guys right now. He's worked on the side, but we thought it was best to keep him out today."
Yeah.
We thought it was
snaps, bouncing the ball off the ground like a quarterback.
We thought it was best to keep him out today is interesting. I feel like he's probably just
this is a phantom injury.
I think he's just doing Elton the solid and being like, yeah, no, he's holding out, but it is what it is. So probably contract related, as he missed OTAs for that. John Williams, Christian Watson, and Julian Hicks also were not practicing. Did any of those stand out to you?
Not, yeah, I would like to see Williams. Fortunately, he's there now after missing the 2 OTAs, but not practicing.
Yeah, it's interesting. It almost makes me wonder. Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, it was that Watson seems to be doing some working out though with I don't know if it was with the team or just on the sideline, but he's not doing nothing, which is already something that he's actually doing a little bit of strength work or some flexibility, considering how recent his surgery was.
Yeah, it's definitely good news, and I think he had surgery kind of late, it took him a couple weeks.
I saw like 5 months ago.
Yeah, so
I've seen 5 months.
Matt LaFleur said during OTAs he was ahead of schedule, and it definitely looks like it. I mean, I still would not. I wouldn't hold my breath.
No, don't rush.
And someone pointed out, I think it was Andy Herman, was like, Bakhtiari after his ACL was out there early, and everyone was like, oh, like wow, he could be back by week 1, and then he was never the same again. So it means nothing really how active they are right now. It's all about take your time, don't push it, don't try and come back, don't set a date. Just that's all I ask. Don't set a goal date. Just when you feel good, get back out there. And it's tough. From Watson's
perspective, it's probably best to wait until he's actually ready. Look the best he can.
Yeah.
To get something for next year.
Yeah, it's so tough for him going into a contract year. I mean, that's what really sucks about it for him. But that's tough. The Banks ones, hopefully not serious. You'd like to be him getting. I mean, I'd say you'd like to have him getting reps with the other starting linemen, but I mean, Elton's not practicing, and then the left tackle we don't know who the left tackle is going to be yet. So it's like, I guess he wouldn't even really know. But anyway, it'd still be nice to see him.
Right. So he could be practicing, but the people on both sides of him could be different.
In flux, exactly. But I will say it'd be nice to just have him getting the reps in the scheme. I know it's a similar scheme to San Francisco, but it's not exactly the same. So, it'd be nice to see that, but hopefully it's just a minor thing and he's just, taking some maintenance days and everything's fine with that. But, fingers crossed on that. But we'll keep you updated on that one. And then Colin Oliver, unfortunately, still, rookie, not able to practice at all yet. A little concerning given that, he missed almost all of last year with a foot injury, his last year of college. So hopefully it's not that. But he
did make it back for testing and Senior Bowl.
Yeah, that's true. But hopefully it's not anything lingering there. And he was doing walkthroughs last week at OTAs, so it kind of seemed like he was progressing, but then he didn't. And then Warren Brinson is finally back practicing after missing most of OTAs with an injury. So that's good. That's some good news there. But anyway, so that kind of does it for injury related stuff, availability related stuff. Let's talk about what was interesting from this day. And I think the biggest interesting thing was I look on Blue Sky this morning. I open it and I see Bo Melton is moving to corner. I have to triple check Silverstein's handle. I'm like, that this is this real?
Is somebody impersonating?
Because that is
Tom Silverstein.
I was, because the thing is, normally when I see like a players are moving positions type, post, it's a player that's a very fringe roster player that like might barely make the team. And I don't know about you, I feel like Bo Melton is a tier, at least a tier above that. Like, he's been on the team the last 2 years. He's had really good games. He's had over 100 yards in an NFL game.
To make the roster.
I don't think so anymore. Although it would be.
I already didn't. I think he's like 6th on the wide receiver chart.
Well, I want to say two things. I felt that way initially. I was like, oh dang, I guess Bo Melton's like really on the fringe. But then today, he was doing reps on defense and offense.
I saw that from, I think, Wes Hodkiewicz or something. It's like he's going, he's in an offense. Oh, he's in a defense. And so he's putting a green penny on when he's on the defensive side or whatever. And
so the fact that it's not like, we're just switching his position entirely gives me maybe a little more hope, where it's like, because if he was full switching to corner, I'd be like, dang, like this is like a last ditch effort to like see if he can make the team, because the wide receiver room is packed and the corner room's a little less packed. But
especially starting yesterday.
But then after practice, Matt LaFleur in his presser was like raving about Bo Melton. He was like, oh yeah, I just showed the whole team cut-ups of like how he works like in practice. And he's like, I love him on special teams. I love him on offense. And so with how good he's looked on special teams, I figured we try him at corner. And I guess he played a little corner at Rutgers before they moved him back to receiver. And they talked about how his brother's a corner.
I liked his brother. I was hoping the Packers were going to draft his brother at corner.
Unfortunately, was not really an option. Although I guess they maybe could have, because they traded down from 40. But anyway. But point is to say, it seemed like Matt LaFleur had nothing but positive things to say about Bo Melton, and this was not just like a move about like, hey, buddy, like, good luck making the team at wide receiver. I think this was maybe just, and he even mentioned Travis Hunter. Like, he's like, yeah, they got that guy down in Jacksonville doing this. So,
we've got Travis Hunter at home.
Yeah, like, yes, big time. We've got Travis Hunter at home energy. And so I guess, do you still, after saying all those things, do you still feel like it's like this is a sign that maybe he is not long for this roster? Or do you think this is maybe just like, hey, the more you can do?
Well, I think maybe this increases his chance of making the roster, actually, in my mind, if he can do it. It's like, unsurprisingly, his physical profile is very similar to his brother's. Compare him at corner.
Yeah, he's got like a 9-something RAS at corner, yeah.
I read the RAS. I did the RAS comparison of Bo Melton to Max Melton as a corner. And then I go online and say, Andy Herman posted the exact same thing.
Yep. And it's what's like a 9.22 or something like that?
9.38.
9.38.
9.38 RAS at corner, and his RAS as a wide receiver is also in the 9s. It's 9.3. So yeah, it's almost identical. He's compared to his brother, he is a tiny bit faster in all splits, and a little bit more a little better agilities, but can't jump as high. Outweighs him by 2 pounds.
Okay. That's why he can't jump as high. It's 2 extra pounds.
2 pounds,
clearly. But so that was interesting. That was like the most like interesting thing I think from the day. Like, where I was like, that's odd. I don't remember seeing anything, because what's the last one of these you remember? James Looney moving to tight end, like alpha D tackle. Like that's
that
really
was a desperation move. Did they switch him more than once?
No, they from D tackle to tight end.
D lineman to
I think he might have made the practice squad. I'm trying to think. Is anyone else like even like jump to mind where
after getting to the Packers?
Yeah, after getting to the Packers, where they were like, and you're Alex Magoo moving from quarterback to tight end last year or 2 years ago.
Wide receiver.
Was it wide receiver? Maybe you're right. Yeah, it was wide receiver. You're right.
Yeah,
right,
but that was very recent.
Very recent though. That was last year, and it's like it's not. The point is, it's usually not guys who ever play. Like, it's guys who are buried on the depth chart, never ever play, and like it's just like hey, you want to try doing this because maybe, honestly, usually it's like, hey, can you do this for the scout team? Like, you're this now. Sorry, like we know it's not ideal, but so like it's just interesting to see, and it seems to be a positive for Melton, but it's going to be something interesting to keep an eye on. But I don't know if you saw, the aggregators ran with it, and it even made an appearance on the McAfee show where they were essentially,
I saw that.
They were like,
they were
this
talking
is,
about it on McAfee.
It was like, why did you cut Jaire Alexander? We're forced to play wide receivers at corners. It was like the spin with it, which it's funny. It's entertaining. But anyway, I thought it was funny. Other interesting things, Colby Wooden's looking huge. I don't know if it's just that picture, but he looks like massive.
I haven't seen the picture. I saw you posted it, but he was already working out at nose tackle in OTAs.
Yeah, but I kind of just
and I was like, okay,
was...
so how big is he now? He was 273 when he was drafted. Supposedly, I think by that, I forget, was that first year, he was up over 290. And maybe last year he was heavy. I don't know. I have no idea how heavy he is now. Is he anywhere close to nose tackle size?
I want you to go look at the photo I just sent you. Because I went and found it, and I just sent it to you. I don't know what lens these guys are using, but
right,
they're using some weird optical zoom. I don't know, but he looks 320 pounds. He looks enormous. He looks like BJ Raji.
Jacobs is what, 220?
220, 215, yeah, something like that.
So yeah, he looks like a couple of Jacobs standing there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know if it's the angle they got him at, but he looks much bigger. And like you mentioned, he was getting reps at like nose tackle with the OTAs. I kind of thought that was just like, hey, Kenny's not available. We're just going to need you to, we're not actually even really doing reps along the D line. So just go eat some snaps there.
No actual contact or pushing.
Exactly. So it's like, we just need you to stand in the spot pretty much while we run the practice. Like you don't need to do anything, but just take up this spot.
Actually,
and he's like,
my opinion of that. Well, I mean, I suppose nose tackle is a place where there's actually, competition for the backup nose tackle spot. But I was thinking, this is the same as, well, let's try somewhere else.
This is another position change. I mean, if he's actually gained that much weight, he actually could play nose tackle, because I kind of was under the impression it was he's probably still around 285, 290. If he looks like that picture, I mean, he might be pushing $3 bills. And if he's pushing $3 bills, he can maybe play a little nose tackle. He's not really coming out of Auburn. It's funny because his prototype was penetrator, one gap guy, played edge at Auburn as well.
Right, well, I mean, he coming out of college at the combine, he weighed less than Rashawn Gary or Lucas Van Ness.
Yeah. So it's how many trips to Culver's are we sending this guy on? My goodness, every single day, this guy's a Quick Trip, just buying as much stuff as he can, trying to put on this weight. I don't know, but it was interesting. But do you have any other thoughts on that? I mean, if he's actually competing at nose tackle, it would make you feel a little bit better at nose tackle depth, because at least you have a guy who's taken some NFL snaps, even though he hasn't taken them there.
Yeah, I mean his who knows what his jumps and 40 time would be like now if he's packed on 40, 50 pounds.
Don't worry about
it. But it would be really good for nose tackle.
Yeah, that's true. If we kept his same jumps, yeah, that's the thing. It's so let's just go to his RAS card and change the weight to 300 and change nothing else and leave it all the same. And he's always the best nose tackle ever. But anyway, more interesting parts. I briefly thought this was interesting, but I guess it doesn't matter. But Donovan Jennings was getting some reps with the ones at left guard while Banks was out. But Matt LaFleur apparently didn't even know that was happening, so I guess that doesn't matter even a little bit. I think that was probably just hey, here, go placehold. The twos are busy or something like that, I guess.
Yeah, I also was I like this because I'm picking
confirming your priors.
Team.
Yeah, you're
so
just
yes,
perfect.
I like this guy's athletic. They gave him a bonus.
They did. He was just hurt a lot.
He was hurt last year,
yeah.
So now is his chance.
But,
and he started. I don't know. I don't know who did. I don't know whose decision.
Didn't even know that. Don't even know who Donovan Jennings is. Quote Matt LaFleur. Not actually.
Did he sneak
not actually quote Matt LaFleur.
You know who he is? He's
Wesley Snipes in
Wesley
Major
Snipes
League.
in
I knew you were
Major League.
But it's hey, that guy's pretty good. But anyway, and then the final interesting thing from practice today that I thought was Jordan Morgan getting the first run of snaps at left tackle with the ones in 11-on-11s. And Matt LaFleur said, they asked him about how he's looking at left tackle, and he was like, well, we're not really playing, it's not really blocking, there's no contact, but in terms of his movement skills and stuff, that he looks great there. So any thoughts on that? I think we both are of the mind that it would be best for the Packers' long-term future if Jordan Morgan wins that job, but it's something interesting at least.
Right. I mean, the best scenario is he is just so amazing that he just is already the best lineman they have. He's vaulted to all pro level as soon as he gets a chance to actually play.
Why not?
So he's just gonna win the job.
If he won the left tackle
so
job, I think
amazing.
it would make things a lot smoother transitioning to next season for sure. And it would be exciting to watch. You'd have a nice young left tackle under contract if that was the case. So that'd be great. Anything else stand out to you from minicamp, from the coverage that we saw? Once again, thank you to all the lovely beat writers and beat reporters and content creators that are able to go to these practices and give us all this information. Andy Herman, Bill Huber, Ryan Wood, Wes Hodkowitz, Mike Spofford, Matt Schneidman, down the list, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Everyone is able to go to these and report from these. We live for this content, so thank you.
Yeah, I always love getting the who's starting, who's lining up where. We had the two tight end sets seem to be getting the kind of the basic look.
Mm-hmm.
Consistent D line for all the open practices so far.
Yeah, it's pretty much always been
Clark, Gary every time.
Yep, every single time.
I can tell for the starters.
Well, and not Clark as much because he's been out of them. When he
was when he was there. It was nice to see him in there actually. Yeah,
and then, also nice to see Kraft back after leaving practice early during OTAs last week.
A reason we didn't understand.
Who knows? Who knows why? We don't know. So.
And Bullard's been coming in for the slot, I think, consistently.
That's actually another interesting thing that I maybe wanted to bounce off you. There was some thought, because I think it was the first OTA practice, he was not participating in team drills. And so the nickel spot was getting shuffled between, Hobbs and Keyshawn, and then Valentine was coming in. But it seems like since Bullard has been back, he has been the nickel in all of those, sub-package looks. So, and I don't think I've seen any reports of him, rotating in at safety like he was in the first OTAs. So it kind of seems like he's going to be the nickel, at least in big nickel.
It seems likely, which then puts Valentine a little further on the bench.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I would not be Valentine was good last year. So I think
coverage was, they did coverage.
It's just nice. It's nice to have the depth. It's nice to have the options, And so we'll see. Maybe Bullard plays really well and keeps that spot. Maybe he struggles and they end up moving one of Hobbs or Nixon inside, and then Valentine plays full time. And I think they love the versatility that those that group of guys offers them, and we know they love competition at every spot. So it's going to be one to keep an eye on.
I like the idea of having somebody they're comfortable with coming in off the bench, no matter who goes down.
Yeah. And
they have guys who are cross-trained, both on the offensive line group, the cornerback room, linebacker, safety, wide receiver. They like having people able to line up in multiple positions, no matter who goes down. They're not stuck. It's I don't know. I don't know. Can you go out there?
Yeah, it's just we're missing. We don't have any tackles left. Shoot. But speaking of corners, since we're talking about the corner room and what might happen if, a guy were to miss time, I think that kind of transitions us fairly seamlessly into a discussion about the cornerback room and where it stands after Jaire Alexander was released.
Do we make any transitions seamlessly? I'm going to interrupt now just so it doesn't happen and throw us off of our game by doing it seamlessly.
Seamlessly enough. But we talked a little bit. Jaire Alexander moving on, and we talked a little bit about the beginning. There is some consternation about what the Packers corner room looks like. And, we decided to kind of go into that a little bit more in depth and give you our thoughts on the Packers corner room. And I think it's important to think about it through a few lenses. So just for the sake of this argument, I'm considering Javon Bullard a corner. He's going to be probably the starting slot corner. He played mostly in the slot at the end of last year as soon as Evan Williams became the starting safety, except for the couple of games that Williams missed. And I'm assuming then that the top four corners, the starting three corners are going to be Hobbs, Keyshawn Nixon, and Javon Bullard. And then the number one backup is going to be Carrington Valentine. And if one of the outside guys goes down, it's going to be Valentine coming in for them. And if Bullard goes down, one of those, Hobbs or Nixon, is going to kick inside, and then Valentine's going to come in. Is kind of how I view that. And so you got
just one little bit of context for Bullard. Last year, he played more snaps in the slot than the rest of the spots combined.
Yeah.
Or close. It's about the same.
And prior to his last year in Georgia, his second to last year at Georgia, he was primarily a slot defender. So it's a role he played in college. It's a role he played a lot last year. It was the most prominent role in terms of where he played snaps last year, like you said. And so for this discussion, I'm thinking of those four as the top corners. You got your three starters in Hobbs, Nixon, and Bullard, and then you got Valentine as the first backup. And so we wanted to look at it through a few lenses. The first is compared to the Packers corner room last year. Is it better? Is it worse? And then the other is, compared to other teams around the league. And we'll talk a little bit about those top 4 corners, because I think some people are concerned about the, who's actually going to be playing, which I think is maybe a little bit overblown. And then we're also going to talk a little bit about some of the extended depth. And we're going to look at the 5th corners of the, some previous Packers teams, this team, and the other teams around the league. Because I think that's where I can hear the argument, because outside of those top 4, you got Kamal Hadden, Micah Robinson, and Greg Jr., and Kalen King, who are all guys who have essentially played no snaps in the NFL. But we're going to talk about why maybe that might not be as daunting a proposition as it might seem on its face. But Dad, let's start with looking at it through the lens of what the Packers were dealing with last year, because as Mark Murphy said, in some ways we're kind of used to playing without Jaire. And so if you look at it from that lens, they didn't really have him much last year. How did it look when they had him and when they didn't have him last year? And keeping in mind, they're also adding Nate Hobbs to this mix.
Right. So the way I look at it is you basically could consider the Packers had 2 different lineups at corner last year. Basically, so 6 weeks they had Jaire and plus 10 snaps in another game. But just so I compared how the Packers defense overall and their coverage when you could look at it, how was with Jaire in weeks 1 through 6 and how was without Jaire after that. So let's start. And so the oddball week is week 11 against Chicago. But overall EPA per play. So I got this from RBSDM. In weeks 1 through 6, their EPA per play was 7th best in the league, negative 0.075. The actual numbers probably don't mean anything to you unless I actually give you the ranking.
And that's EPA per any play allowed or per
that's
pass
right.
play?
So starting with EPA per any play.
Okay.
On defense. EPA per any play, they were 7th best the first 6 weeks with Jaire. Without Jaire, from week 7, including the wildcard game, so including that one, they were 3rd best in the league, though the actual EPA per play was not quite as good, but it was 3rd best. So do with that what you will. Now in dropback EPA per play, with Jaire, they were 11th best in the league. But then without Jaire, from week 7 through the wildcard game, 2nd best in the league in EPA per play, EPA per dropback. Their defensive success rate against the pass also improved. It wasn't as good overall for the season, but it improved from ranked 30th with Jaire to ranked 14th best without Jaire. So basically, all those metrics for RBSDM they got better at EPA per play, pass, dropback EPA per play, and success rate against the pass, all improved actually without Jaire instead of getting worse.
Yeah, and this isn't necessarily to say like, oh, you took Jaire out and they got better. There are some confounding factors. The teams they went against.
Bazillion confounding factors.
You played Edgerrin Cooper more. You played Evan Williams more. You got a little more juice out of the pass rush in the second half of the year. But still,
more comfortable with the new system.
The point is more to say, not that like, oh, you took Jaire out, it's gonna it makes everything better. The point is you took Jaire out and it didn't fall apart. And like you took Jaire out and you still had a really good secondary. Like you took Jaire out and the pass defense was still really good without a pass rush, with no pass rush to speak of last year. And that's with the corner room.
Though there was a little bit more pass rush. In the second half. Talk about that with a
but that's a corner room though that doesn't even have Nate Hobbs in it yet. And so You're also putting Nate Hobbs in there instead of Eric Stokes. And Eric Stokes, I mean, seems like a nice guy, but was not good last year.
And he was playing less and less as the year got on. And this is the thing that I think the point we've been trying to make, and I've been like clumsily falling all over it today. But the point is that they're not replaced. Essentially, their second 2/3 of the year was without Jaire. And so they're adding Hobbs on to that defense, they're not replacing Jaire essentially with Hobbs. They're adding Hobbs to the second half of the year defense,
which we already saw was good. Was a good defense to end the year.
Yeah, and quite good. Near the top of the league in some metrics. And then if you look at some of the PFF grades, overall their average weekly defensive grade from PFF was 70.3 for the season at 14th best. With Jaire, it was 64.08, and without Jaire, 64.49.
Which,
0.94.
You might wonder, like, how does that make sense? How does that average to 70? It's just how PFF does, like, their grading. The idea is, like, if you have a bunch of solid weeks in a row, that's actually good, and so you get a bump there, and so that's why the math there doesn't exactly make as much sense.
The averages of the weeks does not equal the score of the weeks combined.
Yes, it's how PFF does it, which like makes sense. Like someone pointed out once, it's like if you threw for 200 yards and 2 touchdowns, like that would be a solid game. If you did that 17 straight weeks, that'd be one of the best quarterback seasons ever. So it's like that's like the thought process behind it. But anyway, sorry, continue.
Yeah, and for the season, their coverage grade was 4th best in the league for the whole season. And then the coverage grade from weeks 1 through 6 was a little bit better than 67.27 weeks 1 through 6 and 65.2 in weeks 7 through the wild card game. So down a little bit, but not a lot.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
The tackling. But some other things that also improved. The tackling got way better. 58.62 with Jaire to 64.85 without. Now that's just not that doesn't mean that Jaire's missing a lot of tackles. It's everybody's tackling better at that point of the second half of the year.
The defense improved as the year went on and the pass other rush, reasons as well.
So as you mentioned, the pass rush improved from a grade of 61.1 on average to 65.6. And so when the pass rush is getting better, that may have made everything else a little easier. And
so, maybe the coverage wasn't actually playing a ton better. It's just they were in a better ecosystem for playing coverage. It's certainly possible as well.
And so the whole defense performing okay. You say you subtracted Jaire, but you added more pass rush juice from however they schemed it up.
But I think the big takeaway is that you can still have a good defense without Jaire and still have good coverage without Jaire because you did it last year. And then you're adding Nate Hobbs.
The second 2/3 of the year defense was working. And now you've added a new corner to the room.
Yeah, and then you've added Nate Hobbs. And so, like I mentioned, you're looking at the current depth chart, Nixon, Hobbs, Bullard, and Valentine. And if you just look at those 4, I think we have a really solid 4 there. I mean, we saw Valentine, Nixon, and Bullard, like you mentioned in the back half of last year, play some really good ball in terms of coverage. By the end of the year, Valentine was playing over Stokes. So we essentially were playing those 3 guys. Now we're bringing Hobbs in, and I think to complement that group, and he's probably going to start, he's played some really good football in his career as well, albeit not so much at outside corner where it seems like they're going to try and play him. But we've talked about this. If you want to go look at our Hobbs deep dive, we have that back there in the archive. So check that out. It was from like about a month ago. So check that out. But if you look at those top 4, I mean, when you compare it, so what we went through was we looked at all of the playoff teams from last year. So 14 playoff teams last year, 7 in the NFC, 7 in the AFC. And we looked at what their top 4 corners looked like. And we just essentially looked at the top 4 corners that they had by total snap counts, total coverage counts, actually, and looked at what their average PFF grade was. And so if you're just looking at playoff games or playoff teams, so the Packers projected top 4 corners this year have an average PFF grade of had an average PFF coverage grade, of 60.7. And it's fair to say, PFF grade is not the end all be all. It's not definitive. It's not like this player is good, this player is bad because their PFF grades are good. We're not saying any of that. We're not saying that it's a perfect evaluation system, but it's just indicative of how a player has played. And it's a good catch-all. It's not perfect, but for the purposes of this, just, bear with us a little bit. But looking at the Packers, they had an average PFF coverage grade of 60.7 last year. Nixon was at 60.7 with actually 62.7 after the Jaire injury. Hobbs was 61.4. Bullard was 49, but he did get better after the Jaire injury. He was at 53.9 after that. And then Valentine was at 71.4 and a 76.6 after the Jaire injury. So he's actually the best last year. And so you could maybe say, hey, he's going to be playing less. Is the coverage going to be as good? It's a fair question. We'll see. But the point is, the Packers' top 4 corners for the year, for this coming year, last year had an average coverage grade of 60.7. If you look overall in the NFC last year, that would rank 4th amongst the 7 playoff teams. So it's not bad. If you think about like right in the middle of the pack there, it's not perfect, but it is at least it's passable. It would be better than the Lions. It would be better than the Rams. And it would be better than the Commanders, essentially. So better than some of the other teams that they would be competing with in those groups. And then if you look at the playoffs overall, it would rank 10th out of the 14 playoff teams. So the AFC had some pretty good corner rooms. This is pretty much what you're getting at there.
There's only one corner group that they're better than in the AFC. But that's, again, kind of using their whole season numbers. If you think that the second half of last year is a better reflection of how they're doing, then I think that'd be a little bit higher in this list.
But anyway, just to be fair, because like, hey, you could say we could go through every team and be like, oh, when this happened, like we can cut these weeks. But I'm just looking at fairly the whole thing. And then, so I do think that when you look at their top 4 corners compared to the rest of the high level competition, they're around the middle of the pack. Or they're 10th out of 14. They're middle of the pack in the NFC. And I think that is I mean, obviously, ideally, you want to be the best at every single position, but it's just not realistic. But they are firmly like just right smack dab in the middle of the playoff teams that they're going to be competing against this year.
This isn't league wide.
Yeah.
This is just
the playoff teams. And so
playoffs.
that's, I think, a fine place to be. And so I'm not that concerned about the top 4. And so the question is, the depth. And I think it's a fair question because, like we mentioned, Haddon, King, Jr., Micah Robinson have not played a single snap on defense in the NFL. And that is a little bit scary. But my only counter to that is, how many teams have a 5th corner that's like really any good at all? And so I went back and looked at like who other teams' 5th corners were last year. And a lot of teams are usually in a similar spot. I mean, Broncos last year, their 5th corner was a 5th round rookie. Tampa's 4th outside corner was a guy named Josh Hayes, who was a second-year, 6th-round rookie who had played 29 total defensive snaps. And you say 29 is more than 0? Sure. Yes, it is. But it's not that much more than 0. And then their 5th corner was Tyrick Funderburk, who was a rookie undrafted free agent. And so the Bills' 4th outside corner was a guy named Jamarcus Ingram, who had played 52 total defensive snaps in just 3 games over 2 years prior to last year. And then he ended up playing a bunch of snaps for them last year. And it wasn't, it really wasn't that long ago that the Packers were forced to play Carrington Valentine, a 7th-round rookie on one side, and Corey Ballantyne, an undrafted free agent who had like bounced around the league on the other side. And my point is to say, yes, the Packers' corner depth is not great. After the top 4 guys, most teams after the top 4 guys have no corners to speak of. There aren't that many good corners in the league. And that's just looking at the playoff teams. There are a bunch of playoff teams with, guys who are as bad as the Packers' 5th corner. And so it's like, to me, it's like, you look at the top 4 guys, it's middle of the pack for the playoff teams last year. You look at the 5th guy, sure, it's not ideal. Ideally, you like a guy with some experience there. But a lot of teams, like, there just aren't that many good 5th corners in the league, is kind of what I come down to there.
Yeah, you can see some of the 5th corners. Some of those guys you mentioned, some of them had pretty good rookie years.
Yeah, so they had good years. Like, that's the thing.
The Broncos rookie who had like a 74 coverage grade.
Abram Strain was fantastic last year. It's my point is just like, and maybe Haddon, and maybe maybe one of Haddon, one of Kalen King, one of Mike Robinson. Maybe they have really good years this year. You never know. But my point is just that a lot of teams go into the year with uncertain depth charts after their 4th corner, and that's just kind of normal in the NFL because there aren't that many good corners.
Yeah, so I think the overarching thing is like the defense was actually good in the second half when Jaire's not in the equation. Is the defense as good as it could be with Jaire if he's able to play? I think the answer is probably not.
Probably not. I think we'd be trying to sell you something. We're not trying to sell you anything. We're just saying, like you said, it was fine. It was good last year without him.
Right. So the defense can still be good. Is it maxing out its potential if he was there? Probably not. So the question I have is is the fact that we have good safety play, making up the difference between some of these other teams that have, better corner rooms, but have similar overall like DVOA on defense against the pass? Because the Packers were top 10 in DVOA against the pass.
And it's a fair question. And, another question that I have is also, does the Packers coverage, like, is it being overly influenced by takeaways? So the Packers had the 4th most takeaways in the league last year with 31.
Well, we can certainly see that in the difference between EPA per play and success rate. Exactly. Where the Packers defense ranked.
And so if you get a little bit of regression to the mean there, does that start to expose like the rest of does that start to expose the secondary a little bit? Like if Xavier McKinney's not picking off passes for however many games straight it was, does the secondary look worse? Maybe. We talked about last year, the games that Evan Williams missed, the defense did not look as good. That's a kind of a point of in the favor of your argument about the safeties maybe making those other guys look good. And then
but a lot of those interceptions came early, especially for McKinney.
That's true.
And the defense actually was improved in the second half of the year.
That's
and
true.
Some of that maybe that, the getting used. I think there's probably a decent amount of getting used to the system and the system getting used to the players. Like, okay, this is what we need to do differently. And so that's like kudos to Hafley for like, okay, this is working something out on the fly. What we need to do to generate more pressure.
And so second year in the system, maybe they're more comfortable. Now the counter argument is, hey, second year in the system, opponents have another year of tape, a whole year of tape on it to go over for an entire offseason. And, we saw the Joe Barry year, the first year with the defense, they were quite good. And then, or not quite good. They were the best they ever were, we'll say. And then after that, they were terrible. So
what they had actually that first year was a fantastic tackling year.
Yeah, it was like one of the best tackling. It was they led the league in missed tackle rate or
downhill after that. And that was, I think, one of the things that maybe made the defense score pretty well, grade out pretty well overall.
But they were like 12th in DVOA that year or something like that. Like it was a good defense, and then they would never reach those heights ever again. And so I'm just leaving it on the table that, hey, there's the argument, hey, another year in the system, you're another year more comfortable. Everyone maybe plays a little bit better. But then there's also the opposite side of the coin, which is, hey, a whole year of tape. Teams have an entire offseason to look at it and be like, hey, this guy, they can only get pressure when they blitz. So just burn those blitzes. So that's like, we'll see this year. But I think, in his first year, I think Hafley showed more as a coach than Barry did in terms of creativeness and using his players in certain ways. So I do think there's a difference there. And then the last thing I'll say is, I just don't think corners matter as much anymore.
That's like teams safety.
But no, it's not even just that. Teams play zone way more than they used to. Like they don't play that much man anymore. And so I think the question also comes like, do they have the top guys to match up with the top receivers? I think that's a fair question as well. Are you going to be able to put a corner on put a corner on a Justin Jefferson, put a corner on an Amon-Ra St. Brown? And, it's a fair question. My two counter arguments would be, I don't think there's any corner really right now in the NFL that can guard Justin Jefferson one-on-one. I think he would smoke anyone. And I think anyone who is willing to play a corner one-on-one with Justin Jefferson, I'm sure the Vikings are like, thank you very much. We will take every single yard you are willing to give us. And then I will also say, if you look at the top projected outside corners, and you look at the playoff teams, so I went with to the depth charts, our lads of the teams that made the playoffs last year, and then looked at what their PFF grades ended up being. So this wasn't by number of snap counts. I think I just went to the depth charts and I looked at essentially the top outside corner for every single team that made the playoffs last year, and Nate Hobbs' 61.4 grade would rank 4th in the NFC and 9th overall out of the 14 playoff teams. So it was middle of the pack. Because some of the guys had really down years. Marshawn Lattimore was had really struggled for the Commanders. So he was one that I looked at that wasn't, I guess, necessarily on that depth chart. And then, just kind of down the line, a lot of the lead corners struggled last year. But I guess the point is to say, he was about average for the top corners amongst playoff teams last year. So that's another thing to keep in mind. But again, like I said, I don't think there's any corner in the league except maybe Surtain that could one-on-one guard Justin Jefferson. And I don't think you would want to do it anyways. And even if you did, they would just put him in motion and get him matched up on someone else anyways. So does it even matter?
And yes, of all the corners looked at in the AFC, Surtain was by far the best graded of any of the playoff team's best corner.
Yeah, I mean, he's fantastic. He won Defensive Player of the Year for a reason. So, fair enough. But anyway, any last tidbits you wanted to say on the corners? I think the overall thing is the overall concise, summary of it is their top four is that they played well without Jaire to end the season last year. Their top four is comparable to a lot of playoff teams. They are essentially just adding Hobbs to the group that they had at the end of last year that was already playing well. Their top guy is, by PFF grade, which is not perfect, is, on average with the rest of the playoff teams. Their fifth guy is not great, but most teams' fifth guys aren't great. Even playoffs teams' fifth guys aren't very proven. So, it is what it is there. And for the most part, I just think that a lot of the big worries about what the corner room looks like without Jaire are a bit overblown.
Yeah, so just take a little advice from the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Don't panic.
Don't panic. But anyway, so that has been our thoughts on, Jaire, minicamp, and the corner room in general. So let us know what you think. Are we crazy? Have we lost our minds? Is this team going to crumble on the back end without Jaire? Leave a comment. Tell us that. Tell us why you think that, or add us on Blue Sky.
Or how long ago it happened that we,
or how long ago it happened that we lost our minds. Sure, go back and listen bit by bit, and you'll probably get all the way back to the
every single episode, so you can figure out the exact moment when we lost our minds.
You'll probably get back to the first one. But anyway, thank you again for listening. Tell a friend, subscribe, whether that's Apple, Spotify, YouTube. Leave a comment, leave a review, leave a like. Check us out on Blue Sky at Father Son Packer one more time. Check us out next week for some more breakdowns on some Packers news. And until next time, go Pack Go.
Go Pack Go.